This is Travis Wayne Goodsell, and I'm about to do a comment replies. And I need to remind you Mormons that you can't rage against me. You can't put thumbs down. You have to use sound argument. Sound, not unsound, which is what using your emotional response is. Putting a thumbs down is an emotional response, and that's unsound argument. And if you can't soundly argue that the church is true, then you have to leave the church. That's the conditions, that's the rules, that's just the way it is. Sorry, Mormons, you have to leave. It's that simple. If you cannot soundly defend the church, why are you bothering? So I'm sort of turning it on Bishop Reed Hammond, who, when I had posted about the Book of Mormon being the official doctrine of the church, he said, don't post it. Why bother coming to church if you're going to continue to post it? He threatened me. That's a threat. It's somewhat veiled, so he can protect himself. I never said the Book of Mormon was not the... You can't fool people, guys. You can't do wickedness and get away with it. It just don't work unless you're Trump. And you're a Republican. So let's see. There's a new subscriber. We don't need to... Noble Grand 42. Welcome, Noble Grand. Okay, so we got quite a bit here. So, yeah, let's find out who's been naughty and who's been nice. And so, remember, you can't rage against me. You have to defend the church. Raging against me is not a defense of the church. I don't understand why you can't understand it. So let's find out if, because last night when I left, there were 4 Mormons on the one video, and who put thumbs down. And I expect you to not go to church tomorrow. That you lost. You used unsound argument to defend the church, therefore you have to leave. It's that simple. It's a real simple game. It's not complicated. You don't have to memorize. You don't have to know factual information. Well, yeah, you sort of do. You got to be able to defend the church. Wow, 18. Oh, man. So I'm going to keep you in suspense here before we get to the comments. We're going to go... there's probably a lot, so let's go... Okay, there's the initial contest that I started with, and we've got so 10 videos altogether. So let's first tally up the number of thumbs down to see how many members have lost and now have to leave the church. Okay, 8 on the initial video. 8 Mormons now have to leave the church. Okay. And the second one, 7. That's now 15. Do we need to keep a running total? 8, 7. Well, let's just add as we go here so I don't have to add at the end. Okay. And defending the church, 6. Wow, we're going to empty out the church in no time here. 1. Okay. This is so fun. It's like Christmas. And part 2, 7. 28. And the breaking news, 8. 56. Oh, Mormons, you just don't get it. You just don't get it. You just defy logic. You defy everything that's true and holy and innocent and good. 7. That's 43. Unbelievable how stubborn and proud you can be, Mormons. You know you're not supposed to be that way. You've got to use sound argument. It's that simple. An 8. We're now at 51. Mormons, you are failing miserably. Okay. And 7. 58. 5. 63. And the last one. 3. 66. 66 Mormons have now covenanted to leave the church because you can't do it. And even on the one where I said you're failing, you still are in defiance. It's just unbelievable how full of hate you are, how full of ignorance, how full of pride, arrogant, unbelievable. This is not me making false accusations. You're doing it on my channel with the thumbs down. That's proof. That's evidence. That's fact. So don't go whining and complaining when God says, nope, can't come in. Oh, there's another subscriber. Don Sharp. Welcome, Don. Alrighty, so now let's get to the comments, and so we can see those who are full of wrath and hatred, if there are any. Because maybe these are all the people that are, yeah, go Travis, woo! So we'll see. And this is the first time for me looking at it, so we're going to look at it together. Alright, the first one from yesterday. Jennifer. I'm impressed. Nice job. Oh man. No, you're supposed to be an anti-me. An anti-Mormon, anti-Mormon. All right. So, and okay, we're not getting people commenting of hatred. All right, so Jennifer again. Yes, Jennifer, he was. That's how much he was blackballed by Brigham Young. And so, yes, Jennifer Flower is confused now because I said that. I'm telling you guys, this is only a comment of It's Me, Jesse's channel. Her one video, and I'm only halfway through. And I've got 5 videos in the series so far. And so, yes, Joseph Smith was born into a poor family because by the time Joseph Smith was born, Joseph Smith Sr. had wasted Lucy Mack's dowry. And so he was struggling for anything and everything he could do to get money to support a family. And so, yes, he went into treasure searching with the New Israelites. And he was great at being a master rodsman or whatever they gave him the title of. But that was only for money making. It was not for witchcraft. There's no money in witchcraft. You have to turn it into a job. And so that's what he was doing. And so Joseph Smith, you know, he has the rocks in his hat. You know, he's doing that to make money. Oh, I can find your lost treasure, your precious thing, and I can, he was using that so that he can then get a job working as a treasure searcher. And these people would pay him. Yeah, find the treasure for us, we'll dig it up, and we'll be rich. And so, yeah, he had a couple of people that were suckers for that. And, they didn't have metal detectors back then. But that's what Joseph was pretending to be. Yeah, I'm a metal detector. I can find metal for you in the ground, and we'll be rich. And so, yeah, that was their business. And the bodies, D. Michael Quinn says, oh, yeah, there's spirits over protecting the bodies of the dead, and you had to do a seance with the burial to protect it from body snatchers. Yes, that's why when the Smith boy, I think it was Alvin, when he died, they had to protect the body. But they were at the grave, not doing seances and rituals and stuff. They were making sure nobody else molested the grave. Because, why? They were projecting. Because that's what they were doing to make money. Because they were selling the bodies to the professor who's a family friend, who was the teacher of Hiram Smith, because they can only pay for one child to go to college, and it was Hiram Smith, and it's the same professor who was the one who operated on Joseph Smith's leg. And so, yeah, they were trying to make money any way and every way they could. And so when William Morgan came around, their whole life changed. Now it got serious. It's like in the United States now, before Trump, it was like, how do we make money to survive? Because the government's screwing us, businesses are screwing us because the government's allowing the businesses to screw us. And everybody, it's survival of the fittest. Everybody's screwing everybody over to rise up in position in their business, to steal in order to get money, which it doesn't make any sense why you'd steal property and then try to sell it. Utah especially, it's not like New York where you can steal people's watches and then you'll see these watch vendors on the street corners. Oh, yeah, there's my watch that was stolen last week. And so, yeah, there's an underground market here in Utah. That's how they're able to sell things in Utah. They can't do it openly like in New York. And so, although there are pawn shops, but the pawn shops have now working with police officers to identify stolen material. And so they can't really use pawn shops anymore, so they have to create an underground market. And so, and then Trump comes along, and all bets are off, and we're all screwed. And so, so this was what it was like back then too. This was the days where they hadn't really come up with anti-monopoly laws. So you're having these railroad companies just, yeah, slaves, make the railroad, we make money. And that was capitalism, where owners of businesses sit on their duffs, go out golfing, hang out at the country clubs, smoking cigars, while slaves did all the money making for them. And then you get the train robbers. Natural consequence. It's train companies were corrupt. And so you automatically get people who want to reenact Robin Hood. Because people are now able to read books. Oh, story of Robin Hood. Canterbury Tales and all sorts of other fun things. All the Greek literature. And so, yes, this is the time period of Joseph Smith. And all that changed when they realized that there was a serious threat to the United States. Because William Morgan was going around warning everybody. You know, it wasn't just the sky is falling, the sky is falling. It's the Illuminati is coming, the Illuminati is coming. And when he got falsely arrested on trumped up charges, they knew he was being silenced. That was the warning shot from the enemy. And it was serious, and it had spread to Western New York. And so it was a serious thing that he was exposing, and the enemy didn't want him exposing it. And so Smith Sr.'s lodge were the ones who were accused in the courtroom of stealing his body, and then it disappeared under their watch. And so they went to court, and so because Freemasons were assumed by the press as a general categorizing entity, which I warned you guys, don't fall for that. Don't generalize an organization, because there's York Rites, which are Grand Lodge, and Scottish Rites, and they're different. And I go over that in the video I did yesterday with the thumbnail picture of the pyramid with the York Rite levels, 33-degree Masons, and the York Rite, which only has 12 levels, if I counted correctly. And so Joseph Smith, the Nauvoo Lodge, that was the Grand Lodge. The Grand Master that gave Joseph Smith the Master Mason level, which is only 3rd degree, it was in the Grand Lodge level, the 12 levels total. It was not the Scottish Rites of 33 degrees. And so many Mormons mess that up because they assume that Joseph Smith became a 33rd degree Mason and all this other crap as their conspiracy theory. But when you do an actual study of history, you realize, no, okay, it was Grand Lodge, and so there's a different level system than the Scottish Rites. And the Grand Lodge was the one that Joseph Smith Sr. was involved in. And Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball, however, were Scottish Rites Freemasons. Heber C. Kimball became a Master Mason, but Brigham Young never got initiated. He had been attending the meetings because he knows all about it. His brothers were involved in it, and Heber C. Kimball, his childhood friend, and thus they were together the whole time. He was in it. But Brigham Young is not on record of having actually become initiated. You don't get put on the rolls until you're initiated. And you don't get initiated just by showing up at their doorstep saying, hey, I want to be a Freemason. Okay. No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that in the church, does it? You know, we have missionaries going out and doing investigator lessons. You have to be taught first. Now there's an argument of whether people are being rushed to baptism even as we do things now. You know, they go to church a couple of times and, okay, you can be baptized. And then after they get baptized, they leave the church. That's a big problem south of the border, because people down there are poor. And they say, oh, a rich church? Yeah, I want to become a part of that. I want to be rich too. They get baptized. Then their bishops say, no, you don't get no food, no money, no clothing, no substance. You have to be self-sufficient. And they say, oh, okay, screw you then. I'm out. And they leave the church. And I saw a news report. Trevor Noah was reporting on it, And of course, he's a comedian, so he adds his comedy flair. But the Tijuana Mexicans are stealing the border wall. And so, of course, Trevor Noah is saying, yeah, we stole his wall, man, and Trump is paying for it. It's just hilarious. Oh, man. That is so awesome. Kudos to Tijuana. Oh, man. Okay, so to get back to Jennifer's concern, yes, when the news came through William Morgan that there was a threat to the nation, and then that threat tried to silence him, they all knew it was serious. They knew he was wrongfully charged. And you get people who are making false accusations after he got arrested, saying, oh yeah, he was just a drunk going from town to town, telling his conspiracy theories, blah, blah, blah. You know, sort of like what's going on now. And, you know, his 2 books that he was paid to work on by the Batavian Press, those were like the Mueller report. And so for them, you know, they were able to stop the Mueller report. And so, and so the Batavian Press, the owner, he paid the fine to get him out of jail. It was the bond. You know, it wasn't, you know, okay, we'll accept the charges. No, this was the bond to get him out of jail. He still had to return to court. But instead, they secreted him to Niagara, where he disappeared. And there's a whole story involved with the investigation of the local sheriff who did the search. He hired a tracker to find out where this guy went, and big scandal and all that. But yeah, with the court hearings and the punishments, they were handed down to the wrong people, like the sheriff. You know, the sheriff, you know, came out with his report saying, yeah, he fled to Canada, and then he came back through the United States to the eastern ports and got away from my tracker, sailed a ship into the Atlantic, and we don't know where he went from there. And he got the biggest punishment of anybody, and all he did was investigate. And so for lying, and as they called it, he was the one punished the most severely than the 2 or 3 Freemasons from Joseph Smith Sr.'s Freemason Lodge, who were the ones accused of taking away his body and possibly murdering him, as everybody supposed, from the bones that were found on one path in the forest, or the body that rose up in the river or the lake or river or something like that, which ended up being Thomas Monroe. But his wife said, hey, no, that's him, but those aren't his clothes. So something really weird was going on. And so if Thomas Monroe just happened to stumble across and say, hey, I'm going to tell, I can see they had no choice but to kill him. But we don't know what happened to Thomas Monroe, why he was murdered. But yeah, there are people that now speculate because of that incident. You have more Morgan, and Monroe, Mormon. That's where people think that they came up with the name of the Book of Mormon. And so when you have a serious threat to the nation, that's when patriots are born. That's when people reveal who they are in character. When a national tragedy emerges, when there's a serious, imminent threat, that's where you find out what people are made of. And back then, you know, you had Benedict Arnold, the traitor, but you also had men who rose up as true patriots. And black slaves were among many of the true patriots. And part of that was because George Washington granted freedom if they served for 2 or 3 years in service to the nation. And so, yeah, great tragedy often reveals a person's true character. And this was the Smith family's opportunity. And when you realize that the Book of Mormon is the taking over of William Morgan's 2 books combined into one book, because the book that the Batavian Press published the very next year, in the midst of the chaos of the burning of all the Masonic temples with the anti-Masonic movement, that had nothing to do with what he was talking about. It was just the rituals of the lower levels of Freemasonry to get in. And there was nothing earth-shattering with that. And so, and besides, he hadn't finished. He was still working on it when he got arrested. So how then did the Batavian Press finish the book without him? So, you know, obviously there was something else going on. And then, of course, the Book of Mormon starts getting published, or it starts getting written. And you have Martin Harris, who's the first one to be the scribe for Joseph Smith. And of course, Martin Harris is the source from which the church now confesses that there was only one rock, not 2, 1. And yes, okay, fine, he looked in a hat, but it was revelation. No, Martin Harris already knew Joseph Smith. He knew about Joseph Smith using his hat with stones in it to look for treasure. That was already known, and that was part of the cover story. They had to let people think that they weren't associated with William Morgan and the Freemason scandal, because everybody was freaked out and paranoid, thinking that the Freemasons were invading America and they had silenced William Morgan by having him secretly murdered, and all this paranoia was going around, and thus burning of the Freemasonic temples. And even Hiram Smith had to change the spelling of his name so that he would not be associated with Freemasonry's Hiram Abiff. And so, yeah, you get an anti-Mason doing the writing for the Book of Mormon. And then we get this story about 116 pages of the first production of the Book of Mormon going into Martin Harris's hands, and then they're just gone? No, I don't think so. It was clear. When you look at the Book of Mormon, you see all sorts of coding of Freemasonry coding throughout the whole book. It's just awesome. If you know the code meaning, it's like, whoa. But, and so the 116 pages written by an anti-Mason, yeah, he wasn't a scribe anymore after that, was he? And And so then you get Oliver Cowdery. Well, Oliver Cowdery is a family cousin, second or third cousin, something like that. But I think William Cowdery, also Mason, as I was pointed out by Jessie in her video, which I verified, and it was William, not Oliver. She made the mistake of making the son the Mason, not the father. And so, yeah, Oliver Cowdery then comes on and helps with the translation and helps finish it off, because his wife Emma was part of it, but it didn't go very far. and then Oliver Cowdery was brought in. Well, why Oliver Cowdery? What's going on? Why take a certain amount of time with this? What was going on? What's happening? Well, remember William Morgan? He was working on the book. He had to write it out on paper first. Then what happens is that you have somebody who transfers the written word on paper onto copper plates. The copper plates were what the print press goes off of to print up the actual finished product. And it's not a coincidence that the Smith family moved from Palmyra to a farmstead where they build a coppersmith shop. Not a coincidence. And but how did they get the story idea? What's going on? Well, when I think it was William Smith, I think it was William Smith, if I remember correctly, went on his mission, passing out Book of Mormons, he came across a neighborhood where everybody in the community said, "Hey, wait a minute, we recognize this book." Solomon Spaulding used to come to our bar or tavern and read from his book. This is his book. What are you doing with his book? And then, of course, there's the Mormonism Unveiled that was published, exposing the plagiarism of Solomon Spaulding's book. And that the Book of Mormon is plagiarized of his book. And so then you got to do research. Well, who is Solomon Spaulding? What was this book? Well, Solomon Spaulding wrote a book, and he gave it to the press. I can't remember in which town, but he didn't have the money to publish it yet. So he gave it to the press to hold on to, and then he would work towards getting it paid off. However, he died. And then soon thereafter, the press went out of business. And so the leftover manuscripts that were just hanging around, they were either destroyed or people were allowed to walk off with them. And one of the people who just happened to be connected to that location, to that press, who hung out there on a regular basis because his buddy worked there, and so he became familiar with everybody who worked there, was Sidney Rigdon. And so there's the Sidney Rigdon scandal. Now, other people are saying, well, what about the View of the Hebrews book? What about that? Where does that fit in? Well, that has to do with Vermont, with Oliver Cowdery. William and Joseph Smith Sr. went to the New Israelites. That all blew up in flames when they predicted the end of the world. And they then went back to Congregationalists, I think it was. I have to double check to make sure the religion is correct. But after Smith and his family left, moved out of the area to New York, the Cowderys still stayed behind. They didn't move with the Smiths. And so William Cowdery and his family were attending, I'll just call it Congregationalists. I'd have to fact check me on it. But then Ethan Smith comes to town and takes over as the preacher of that congregation. And then he comes out with his view of the Hebrews. So Oliver Cowdery knows of the view of the Hebrews. That's the connection. But Solomon Spaulding, his book is more prevalent. There's not a plagiarism with the view of the Hebrews. And it's only the concept, but the concept was well known in those early times among everybody. They were all speculating, who are these Indians that we're slaughtering as we expand westward? And so, yeah, the tale of American history is awesome if we were to actually be told American history, not what people want us to know. And so, yes, when America was in jeopardy, the Smith family rose to the occasion and set aside their money-making schemes and went forward to warn everybody to take over where William Morgan left off. And they had to do it not through Freemasonry, because Smiths wanted Freemasonry. Joseph Smith wanted to be a Freemason. He didn't get to be a Freemason like his brother and his father were, because you have to be involved in the several meetings as often as you can before you can then finally be accepted. You know, the whole First Vision, I attended their meetings as often as I could. He wasn't talking about the religious fervor that occurred later in a different township south. He just used that as the cover story. It was Freemasonry that was the big deal during that time period. New temples were being built, and then with the anti-Masonic movement, temples gone. And so what does Joseph Smith do? He organizes a church rather than a Freemasonic lodge. You can't do a lodge because, one, he's not a master Mason, I think, no, neither Hiram nor Smith Sr. were Master Masons either. I don't think they obtained to that level. I'd have to fact check me on that too, but it's still too early from the anti-Masonic movement. People were still in a rage going after President Andrew Jackson, not understanding that he was also knowing about this plot to destroy America, which is why he fought during his presidency and succeeded in the end to get rid of the central bank of Nathan Rothschild. But then, yeah, lots of government problems ensued, and then government put it back in as the bank for America. And now we have the Federal Reserve, of which Jason Chaffetz wanted to audit, and then after making his bold declaration, I'm a congressman, you have to do what I say, and I'm going to audit the Federal Reserve. Soon thereafter, yeah, I'm quitting, you know, I need to spend more time with my family, you know, I'm young, you know. Then he goes off to Harvard to teach there. Then he gets hired with Fox. So he leaves his family again. Yeah, he was chased out. And so, yeah. And so, yes, there's a lot of information around this. But in short, yes, there was a threat to America, and the Smiths set aside their pettiness for money making and changed to want to be a part of saving America. Unfortunately, the enemy infiltrated the church, got into positions of lower authority, rose in authority, and took out Joseph Smith and Hiram. And they're now the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Utah. So that's why the church doesn't stand up against Trump. That's why they don't stand up against Hitler. And we're aiding and abetting in both authoritarian governments. And so there you have it. Yeah, the church is false for not following Joseph Smith, but it wasn't intended as a religion. It just had to be a religion in order to not get exposed, because as a religion you've got certain protections and freedoms, and you're not considered a Freemasonic organization. And so when Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball pushed Joseph Smith to have a Freemasonic order, you know, they both were Scottish rites, but they pushed to have a Grand Lodge rite order. And so, yeah, it's like being a Dodger fan, but the Dodgers get exposed for corruption and the team is done away with. But then a decade later, you have Dodger fans saying, we need to have a new Dodger team again, but we can't call it Dodgers, so we'll go to the Angels organization and say, hey, we want to create a new baseball team, and we'll call it the Angels. That's what the it's not the exact same, because I understand it's now the Los Angeles Angels, when they used to be the California Angels. And so I'm not happy with that, because it's Los Angeles is Dodger country. You know, the Angels need to stay in Orange County. And so, but I hope you understand the idea of how Brigham Young was sneaky on this. He wanted to be a Freemason, as Heber C. Kimball was, and Joseph Smith was not doing it. This whole church and priesthood thing is not good enough. We're not doing any of the Freemasonic rituals. And so, yeah, you can see he tried to get Joseph Smith to start up the Freemasonic order, and they finally got it going. And then Joseph Smith clearly was not doing it according to Brigham Young's satisfaction, because, you know, when Joseph Smith died, then Brigham Young started making changes, adding the drama ritual, similar to Freemasonry, but with a religious tint, with the creation of fall story, and then and then combines the Freemasonry name, signs, and tokens to the temple ritual. And thus Heber C. Kimball is quoted by Jessie in her video, who says, oh, the temple is the true Masonic order. Do you see what he's doing there? He's Scottish rites, talking about having changed the Nauvoo Lodge Grand Lodge into a Scottish rites Brigham Lodge. And so, yes, yeah. But yeah, Joseph Smith never really intended to have, you know, a concept of Heavenly Father and Jesus as separate and distinct beings. That was because of Thomas B. Marsh's 8-year-old son, who in 1838 told Joseph about that experience that the young boy had of his dream. And so then Joseph Smith goes and writes the church history and says, oh yeah, Heavenly Father and Jesus, changing the previous accounts of Nephi and all that. So he sort of altered the religion over time, But his main focus from the beginning was Book of Mormon, Book of Mormon, Book of Mormon, Book of Mormon. They went out, Book of Mormon, we've got this Book of Mormon. And yes, they used the Freemasonic coding. We found the buried gold plates and translated them. This is the message. And it's to us here in the United States. They were doing what William Morgan was silenced. They carried off that same mission. And that's the true history of the church. But the current church will never reveal that, because that means that Brigham Young is an American traitor. Okay, so does that answer it for you, Jennifer? Alrighty. MD, yay! Okay, on my video, Defending LDS Church, Jesse's video, part 3. Yes, that about sums it up. Those of white privilege are dumb. Hey, I'm of white privilege. And I told you that. My parents, especially my mom, because she dominated over my dad and turned him from a Democrat into a Republican. But I'm not a Democrat nor a Republican. But you get the understanding that my mom is alt-right white, supremacist, and Mormon. She's served a mission and all that, and she thinks the underwear is magical, and so yeah. Oh, she only got 2 minutes into the video when she commented. Okay. Okay, here we got a new guy, Jim Loizos. Jesus is the only high priest. Who was Caiaphas, Jim? Who was Caiaphas? You do not understand. You do not understand, and there's no point in arguing. Okay, Kevin Johnson. Others could be lying for the Lord. I recognize that video title. Just a suggestion. There are many others too. Great video. Oh, come on, guys. Where are the Mormons who want to use sound argument to prove the church is true? Where are you guys? You're just putting thumbs down. Come on. I want competition. Is your God taking a piss? If you don't know the original text of Elijah and the priests of Baal, you're not going to understand that joke. But I did it in the video last night. I quoted from that passage and put the translation of the one word that was wrongly translated because people don't like that word. Where's my competition? All right, Jay Jenkins. Check out Ezekiel 23:20. It's one of my... I don't care to check out. What are you doing? Do your own video about how that's your favorite on your channel, but we'll do it just to pacify you. But I think I've gone over this before with you. For she dotted upon their paramours, whose flesh is as the flesh of asses, and whose issue is like the issue of horses. Yeah, that's hilarious. My favorite scripture, you ask? Why, thank you for asking. It is, the light of the body is the eye. It's in several different passages. The Doctrine and Covenants version I like the best. Scriptures and chlorophyll go nicely together. Yeah. Naomi Sessions, 3rd thumbs up on video. Come on, where's my competition? Where are the Mormons outraged who give me a fight? Jay Jenkins is now doing comedy routine. Scriptures and chloroform go nicely together. They both make you dizzy. Yeah, I got it the first time around. Pat Matt. Who are you to dictate? Yes! 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 We finally got someone. Pat Matt. You have used unsound reasoning. You're out! It's not me who dictates it. You just dictated it because you used unsound reasoning in your argument to defend the church, because you went after me rather than defending the church. That is unsound argument, and you're out of there. The church expects your resignation. You cannot show up to church no more. You are out, and I will notify you of that. Finally, the last person. Pat Matt, you just used unsound argument to... What do you mean? Argument to defend the church by attacking me rather than soundly defending the church. Therefore, you failed, in all caps. I now expect you to leave the church in shame. Yay! Finally, a channel name to the voice of evil. Okay, you failed. Or as my anatomy teacher in high school, I can't remember his name anymore. Yoshida, maybe? Or was that my philosophy of science teacher in the University of Canada? Can't remember which. But so awesome. Okay, and Naomi Sessions and Jay Jenkins are going back and forth with each other. Pickup line. Yes, I use the Bible for my pickup lines. Hey, are you a sacral prostitute? You want to get closer to God? Oh my God. Don't use the Bible as a pickup line, guys. Oh man. Just hilarious. Okay, so 66 Mormons shamefully put thumbs down and must now therefore leave the church. You know who you are. It doesn't matter if I know who you are. You know who you are. You lost. You could not defend the church. Therefore, you have to leave. If you can't defend the church, why are you bothering? See, I defended the church, and the bishop told me not to bother. So it's kind of, is it an irony, or is it a, what is it called? Because if it hadn't have been for Bishop Reed Hammond, who lives just down the block, I would never be doing this against Mormons. So okay. So 67 Mormons I'll put in the video. In the title of this video. Just hilarious. Okay. Oh, somebody brand new commented just in the nick of time here. Okay, so let's see who they are before I end. Oh, Christina Austell. I told the bishop the logo design from graphic designers are Freemasonry symbols. Yeah. So she's stuck. She's in that limbo stage where you know you're being abused by the church, but you don't have the courage or the ability to leave. And so she's being extorted and abused and all that by the church leaders and the members of her area. So yeah, she needs to get out. And I keep telling her, get out, get out. So, all right. Alrighty. I woke up this morning, and as I was running during the rain, I thought, you know, maybe I could do a video about what the latter-day name of the last days Messiah is supposed to be according to prophecy, because they give the name, but you have to know how to identify the name, because everybody says, oh, it's the branch, and then Isaiah says his name is Emmanuel, because it's not Jesus. No, not Jesus. Because why? Jesus did not establish the kingdom on earth. He died. So Isaiah is talking about the last days Messiah, not Jesus. And people miss that. Jews haven't missed that. They understand. They think Christians are dumb. And so, yeah, it's not. And then Mormons say, but Isaiah was in the Book of Mormon, and it says Jesus. No, Freemasonic coding. They have to get it past the Christianity in America, who are hateful of Freemasonry. So Joseph Smith created a church as a cover. Lighting. And with that cover, he was able to start making temples like the Freemasons. And he was able to get the Book of Mormon spread throughout the United States. It wasn't really intended to go to Europe, but hey, if we can get more people to join in the fight against this Illuminati threat to the United States, the better. Yeah, that's how they did it. They used religion to form an organization to counter the Illuminati threat. And unfortunately, the Illuminati took over and killed off the leader, and now we're in Utah. But yeah, I could tell you the name, because Emmanuel, that's also a clue as to his name, and it has to do with the Amun priesthood, Remember? Who is son Amen? Mormons, you remember that name? You not familiar with it? How about Adam Ondai Amen? And Bruce R. McConkie's translation as the place of God where Adam dwelt. Where do you think the God comes from? Amen. That's the Egyptian god. And who's the Egyptian god? He's a sun god. So when Jesus is referred to, I believe in Luke, as the son of the highest. Highest? Highest is not a noun. It's an adjective or an adverb. Actually adjective, the highest, because in the Greek it's the highest sun. The sun in the sky, not a son as a father-son thing. It's the highest sun in the sky. In the Egyptians, the highest sun in the sky is Amen. Thus, Amenel, Emmanuel. And it's different than the spelling of Amen, which is the phonetic equivalent of the Egyptian Amen. But Amen-El, as Emmanuel, the God, it has the ayin, the Hebrew ayin, instead of the Hebrew aleph. And that's the sun symbol in Paleo-Hebrew. You won't recognize it in Aramaic script, in the biblical Hebrew text. And so when you learn how to translate and decipher Paleo-Hebrew, you understand, hey, they're trying to represent the meaning through pictures. And so the God Amen is who Emmanuel is that Isaiah is talking about. And so the name you're looking for is a sun god, but in English. And then he's of the Amen priesthood, which only comes from the great and abominable church of the Latter-day Saints. And you're saying, well, how can that be? How could he come from the bad church? I don't get it, Travis. What's going on? You don't know the Egyptian myth. Osiris, good king, rules Egypt, which represents the whole world at that time. And it was, according to 23andMe, Egypt, the source of civilization. The Garden of Eden. And, you know, the Garden of Eden, you know, whatever. Anyway. And so then you have Set, his brother. Set wants to be king. Me bad. Me kill brother. He kills his brother. And then there's all sorts of stuff involved with it, chopping up his body into 14 pieces, and thus the sacrament, you rip up bread into 14 pieces, well, not 14 pieces, but you rip up the bread, and then you pass out the sacrament to people, and everybody takes a piece of the bread. Well, that was the Egyptian temple ritual, where you give offerings of food and drink to the temple in remembrance of Osiris, who shed his blood and his body was broken. You get a sacrament back, as Mormons call it. And Catholics have different sacraments, but it's the communion sacrament with the wafer now, and the wine, which the altar boys drink and get drunk off of, and then get raped by their leader of the congregation. So. Yeah, it all originates from Egypt, guys. Jesus did not initiate the sacrament. He did not initiate the church. He, you know, and so, yeah, you're looking for a guy with the name Sun God, and he's a Hebrew. Well, what is Hebrew? They're not really sure how to define it other than crossings, because they believe incorrectly that the Hebrews came from Mesopotamia across the river Euphrates into the promised land of Egypt. Because Canaan was a part of Egypt. Everybody misses that part. So, And so, yes, he's a Hebrew. What is Hebrew? He who is from the crossings, or crossroads, but you'd have to add Derek as part of the name. So, because Derek would be the main noun, it would be Derek Hebrew, or Heber. But yeah, and then just drop off the Derek, because that would indicate the way of the Hebrews, which is a religious organization. So, yeah, it's just Hebrew, crossing, he who is from the crossroads. And so that's another name. Because remember, back then, they only had one name. And to distinguish themselves from others with the same name, they would often incorporate, I'm son of so-and-so. Bin Laden is the Arabic bin. But Hebrew used Ben, and Aramaic used Bar. And so you have Bar Kokhba. And Bar Kokhba was the one who claimed to be the last days Messiah, who would follow him, of the Jewish people, into the desert wilderness where they died. And so he is no longer considered a Jewish Messiah, but he serves as a reminder, don't get fooled by false messiahs. And so yes, Brigham Young claimed to be the last days Messiah and took those who would follow him into the desert wilderness to spiritually die, because he did not have authority to lead the church. And so, yes, in the Egyptian myth, Horus is in the womb of Isis. Before Osiris ascends to heaven, he gives birth through his wife, Isis, who represents the church. And Horus comes from within the church, and she has to flee into the desert wilderness of Egypt. And there Horus is raised in the west. And so thus Ezekiel says, oh yeah, he'll be living in the land of tall trees similar to the cedars of Lebanon. Oakland. And so that's in the west. And then also talks about him being from Utah when the last days hits. Not a coincidence, but that's not his name. That's who he is. And then other stuff like Michigan, the Great Lakes, Great Waters, that is also talked about. Yeah, and so when Horus grows up, he's initiated into the temple rituals of the church, and is taught and educated by Thoth, who is King David, as I've done in other videos and posts and books and blah blah blah. And so he is raised to be the last days Messiah, and that's the whole symbol of the myth. And he goes back to the kingdom to battle his uncle Set, and gets wounded in the eyes. His eyes represent the solar and lunar eclipses as they go dark by being wounded. And so yes, you're looking for a time period now that the Egyptians are prophesying of. They knew all this. This is just awesome. But yeah, and so yeah, somebody who's from the crossroads, who's a sun god, and you have to identify the church, and that would be pioneer, but they don't have a name for pioneer per se that I've found. And handcarts, I can't find a name for a handcart puller. If you've seen the old Battlestar Galactica, the crew finds imprisoned people, and Starbuck says that, oh, I'm Starbuck. And the lady who's acting as if she's drunk says, well, Starbuck. What's Starbucking? She assumed that his name had to do with a task or a chore. And it should have, and Starbucks should have known his meaning, but he lost out on that opportunity to explain it. But that's how the ancients understood it. They knew that it wasn't just one name as they understood it. And yes, there are titles. You know, Isaiah says, Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Priests, the government shall be on his shoulders, blah, blah, blah. Those are all titles. It's not his name. And so when you talk about them saying, oh, it's the branch, well, nobody's named the branch. What do you mean by that? Well, you go to Ezekiel. Oh, from the high branches, a twig is taken and planted in Northern California, in Oakland. So he's the twig, not the branch. So that's his name. And so, yeah. But it's not just one name. So twig has to incorporate either all of them as an acronym or as one of the names. And so, but there is Wagoneer, and that is an actual name, and so that also could be included in that instead of pioneer or handcart puller. And so, but you're wondering, well, how did Horus come from Set? Isis, she was the good person. So how is, well, then you have to go back and see how Horus won the battle. And that was because Horus was given a salad with a special sauce, and I'm not going to tell you about it because everybody freaks out and doesn't understand it. Egyptologists don't understand it, but it has to do with Horus being the legitimate king to replace his father by being born through Set, literally. And so, if you're wondering, well, that makes no sense. Why would? Have you not read the Bible? Have you not read about this guy named Usurper, who usurps the birthright and blessing from he who is hairy, who got the idea from his mother, and first gives a bowl of porridge for the birthright blessing son to have, to give up his birthright, then goes to the blind father, 2 eyes darkened, who then gives the blessing to the usurping son. I told you guys, the Bible is taken from the Egyptian documents. Little messed up and twisted around, but that's where it came from. So there you go. And if you can't figure out the story I'm referring to, then you have no clue as to who Isaac was, and Jacob and Esau, and Rebecca, the mother. And then notice that when Jacob wins and becomes the birthright blessing son, he then gets 2 wives, Rachel and Leah. Not a coincidence, because Set, when he lost, he was banished from the kingdom and sent out into the desert. And his wife, Nephthys, was given to Osiris, who was dead. Thus, spiritual wifery. That's where that comes from, in case you didn't know. So, there you have it. The Egyptian stories, the Egyptian religion in the Jewish Bible, the Torah. So, what more proof do I need to give you guys? Okay, so we're at an hour and 15 minutes, and only the only the actual followers, which I think is only MD at this point, if she can get caught up on everything that I've given her. And so, yes, MD, I will teach you Egyptian if you want. I gave you the first chapter of the lesson manual with that Egyptian myth story, because everything in Egyptian centers on that myth. And so I can put it out in writing for you so that you see it in whole, and I can work on the lesson manual at the same time as I instruct you on how to translate, decipher Egyptian. So, yeah, if you eventually get to this and you're listening, feel free to let me know. Alrighty. 67 Mormons down in flames. Yeah!